I am DS, your psychologist, and welcome to another episode on Channel NITT. This is a very special episode because this episode serves three objectives. First, after watching this episode, you will be able to understand why the INTJ and the ENTJ are usually more intelligent than the general population. Second, you will also have a rough idea of the intelligence of all the 16 MBTI types. Most people have a very fuzzy understanding of the S and N dichotomy in the MBTI. So they will say that people who are the S types, they are more interested in facts, while people in the N type, they are more interested in concepts, big pictures. So after watching this episode, you will also have a more scientific explanation of the S and N dichotomy. Wonderful, isn't it? Yes, let's get into it. So cognitive researchers or researchers who study our mental processes or what happens in our brain have established that there are two systems in which all human beings use to process information and to arrive at decisions. They call this the dual model of thinking. So in this model, there are two systems, System 1 and System 2. Now, System 1 is our intuitive system. It is able to arrive at a decision very quickly, so it is very fast. We make decisions based on System 1 unconsciously. System 1 is triggered automatically and is often used in our everyday decisions. So for example, what should I wear today? This question will usually trigger System 1. So you go to the wardrobe, choose, done. This is what I'm going to wear today. Of course, while System 1 is a very quick system for you to make decisions, it is usually error prone. So besides engaging System 1, we also have another option, that is System 2. So as opposed to the intuitive system, the System 2 is very rational. However, it is very slow in arriving at decisions. In order for you to use System 2, you have to make a conscious effort. We usually use System 2 for very complex decisions, like moral dilemmas. As opposed to System 1, System 2 is supposed to be more reliable. So take note, both systems exist in our brain at the same time. Which system we choose can depend on the context of the situation. So for example, in a very important situation such as an exam, we may be more inclined to use System 2 because our marks, our graduation is at stake. On the other hand, for less trivial decisions like what to eat today, we might use the intuitive system. There might be situations where we can have the option of either choosing System 1 or System 2 to arrive at a solution. Take for example, during the Christmas period, there might be a campaign in a particular shopping mall. They have a sculpture that's made up of a lot of balloons, and as a shopper, they invite you to guess how many balloons make up this big sculpture. And if you guess the number of balloons making up this sculpture correctly, you get to win a grand prize. For the person who prefers to use System 1, they just look at the sculpture and then they just say, okay, 5,491. They just come up with a number based on a gut feel. It's very quick. However, for a person using System 2, they might want to count the number of balloons, or they might divide the entire sculpture into a lot of different sections and then say, okay, this head maybe got 500 balloons, this tail 300 balloons. And then so the entire balloon dinosaur, for example, should be made up of 500 plus 300. Oh, okay. So it's a very long process, but they arrive at a number. So in this case, the person can choose to use System 2. So in general, N types in MBTI prefer to use System 1 and S type prefers to use System 2. It is a general preference. This does not mean that the N types will not use System 2. It's just that under normal circumstances, they will prefer to use System 1. On the other hand, the S type people prefer to use System 2, even though they can choose to use System 1. So research has found something interesting. Those people who prefer to use System 2 will insist on using System 2 even under conditions of cognitive overload. So the S-type prefer to use system 2, right? So when they are overloaded with a lot of cognitive information or a lot of tasks to do, they still prefer to use system 2 instead of system 1, even though system 1 is free for them to use. They refuse to. They just want to use system 2, even though now it takes a longer time for them to arrive at a decision. So in a way, system 2 users, the S-types, are very rigid. But this is probably because the S-type people, especially the SI users, need reliability. They want to be very, very sure. If you take a closer look at system 1 and system 2, system 2 users tend to be SI or TE users. So as you can see from here, system 1 is more intuitive and system 2 is rational and logical. So people who prefer to use system 2 will be the S-types, they are the ST types and the SF types. On the other hand, the intuitives prefer to use system 1, particularly the NF types. They might choose to use the system 1 exclusively. Now here comes, there are 4 NT types. The NT types have a very unique ability because they can use the system 1 and system 2 equally well.
Do with equal you'd never do with any other low-calorie sweetener.
So as an ENTJ, when I am faced with a problem, immediately I engage system 2 to think of all the various possible solutions. Then automatically system 1 will come in and choose the best solution. So I use system 1 to filter out all the options that are not so plausible or possible, and all the options that may have led to worse outcomes or not so good outcomes. So I believe that each of the 4 NT types are able to use both systems equally well. So in Singapore, the education system focuses almost exclusively on system 2 to develop your mathematical skills, your scientific skills. All of these skills are embedded in system 2. So in a way, if you were to gauge IQ in terms of academic performance, then those people who rely more on system 2 should be able to do better in it, right? However, system 1 also comes into play when you talk about being good in your studies. For example, in additional maths, some foreign questions that require a bit of thinking come very intuitively to the N types, or those who prefer to use system 1. When they look at the question, it seems a little bit foreign, but they are able to immediately see the solution. So in a way, it is true that the NT types could be considered the more intelligent types if you do consider academic performance as a mark of intelligence, especially in Singapore, where there is so much focus on academic excellence. So this is no wonder why the INTJ and the ENTJ are usually people who do better in their studies, and therefore seemingly more intelligent. Why? Because they are the rare types that are able to use system 1 and system 2 equally well. While other types prefer to use either system 1 exclusively or system 2 exclusively, the INTJ and the ENTJ can use both in parallel. So they process information much faster. They are also able to think from a lot of points of view and therefore arrive at a very good solution. And this is especially true for the INTJ. So now the question would be, what about the ENTP and the INTP? Aren't they intelligent as well? Yes, they can be professors, they can be academics because they tend to think from a very conceptual point of view. So the difference between the INTP and the ENTP as opposed to the INTJ and the ENTJ is that the INTP and the ENTP can also be very good in their studies, also very intelligent. However, their intelligence lies in a very conceptual plane. So the INTP and the ENTP can discuss things like relativity, fifth dimension, some scientific things like photons very well. They can even talk about inflation rate, unemployment rate at a very conceptual point of view. However, practically, they may not have a good solution for it. So academically, it is possible that the INTP and the ENTP, especially the INTP, would be the most intelligent. But in practical sense, maybe not. Now let's go back to something that I mentioned earlier. I mentioned that system 1 tends to be error prone, right? So why use system 1 at all? System 1 can actually be very accurate for the trained individual. So here we come to NI users. So NI users and NE users might use System 1 exclusively, right? It is the NI users who may be more accurate at using System 1 to arrive at a decision or arrive at a judgment. So research has found something interesting. When participants who prefer to use System 1 exclusively were shown pictures of strangers and asked to deduce their personality or asked to deduce their sexual orientation, they are actually very much more accurate than people who use System 2. So System 1 can also be very accurate. We call this thin slicing. So for System 1 users, all they need to do is to get a very thin slice of the entire picture and they can see the entire picture. Amazing! So it is very possible for well-trained users of System 1 to come to use System 1 in a magical way. So I remember a lot of times when I was a student and I attempted MCQ questions, when I tried to check my answers, I actually amended some of my original answers. And the amendment was wrong. My original answer was correct. Sometimes when you have too much time to overthink, you actually make a wrong decision instead. So it is definitely possible for System 2 users to arrive at a wrong judgment or decision because they have too much time to process information and think. Sometimes they overthink, that's why they arrive at a wrong decision. So System 2 might be reliable, but it is also not totally error-free. On the other hand, if you train yourself enough, System 1 can lead to very good results. And it has been proven by research in a concept known as thin slicing. So I hope that this episode has given you some insight into the intelligences of the MBTI type and to understand why the INTJ and the ENTJ may be regarded as more intelligent than the general population. So as an MBTI and psychology channel, we try to infuse psychological principles into our videos as well. So if you think we deserve your subscription, do consider subscribing if you have not subscribed. In the future, we are definitely going to produce more episodes like this. Do stay tuned. Okay, I am going to sign off now and I'll see you in my next episode. Goodbye!